Marina stepped off the plane, her legs a little stiff from the long flight. The airport felt different today. There was a buzz in the air, an energy that seemed to make everything around her feel just a bit off. She tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, reminding herself that she was heading home. After all, her boyfriend Adam was waiting for her. It had been a few months since their last visit, and Marina was looking forward to spending some quiet time with him. The city's chaos, the constant noise of her work, the endless demands from everyone around her. It all felt overwhelming. But when she thought of Adam, everything seemed simpler. He was her anchor in a world that often felt too fast and too loud. She glanced at the arrivals board, her eyes scanning for the signs pointing her toward baggage claim. She still had plenty of time before she needed to meet him outside. The walk from the terminal felt longer than usual, the cold air biting at her skin as she made her way toward the large, bustling space. The sound of people rushing by, the soft murmur of conversations, the echo of luggage wheels scraping against the floor. All of it seemed so ordinary. Yet, there was something about the air that felt thicker today, almost oppressive. As she passed the cafes and shops lining the terminal, Marina noticed a man standing near one of the seating areas. He looked unremarkable, just an older man in a worn jacket, but there was something peculiar about the way he was watching her. His eyes seemed to follow her every move, not in an obvious way, but subtly, like he knew exactly where she was going. Marina quickened her pace, dismissing the thought. It was probably nothing. After all, airports were full of strangers. But as she passed him, the man spoke. "You're meeting Adam, right?" His voice was calm, steady, as if he'd been waiting for her. Marina froze, her steps faltering for just a moment. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice a little too sharp. The man didn't seem taken aback by her reaction. Instead, he simply nodded, a knowing smile on his face. "Adam," he repeated, his eyes not leaving hers. "He's waiting outside, but you should know something about him." His tone was casual, almost conversational, but there was an underlying urgency that made Marina's pulse quicken. "Who are you?" she asked, a knot forming in her stomach. The strange unease that had lingered since her arrival intensified, curling in her chest. "I'm someone who knows things," the man replied cryptically. "Things you don't know about him. Things that you should know before you get too close." He took a step forward, and Marina instinctively took a small step back, unsure of what to make of the situation. Was this some sort of prank? But there was no sign of laughter in his eyes, no glint of amusement, only an unsettling calm. "Listen," she said, trying to regain control of the situation. "I don't have time for games. I'm meeting my boyfriend and—" The man interrupted her, his voice low and steady. "He's not who you think he is." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and for a moment, Marina was paralyzed. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words got stuck in her throat. She wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss him as some eccentric stranger. But something in his eyes, something deep and unsettling, kept her rooted to the spot. "You're mistaken," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "You don't know him." The man didn't argue. Instead, he simply gave her a long, measured look, before turning and walking away, disappearing into the crowd as if he had never been there at all. Marina stood there for a moment, her mind spinning. What had just happened? Who was that man? And what did he mean by what he said? She glanced nervously around the airport, but there was no sign of him now. She shook her head, trying to convince herself that it was nothing, that it had been a strange encounter, and nothing more. But deep down, a feeling lingered, one she couldn't quite shake. Something wasn't right. Marina tried to push the strange encounter out of her mind as she made her way to baggage claim. She shook her head, almost laughing at herself for allowing the odd man's words to get under her skin. He was probably just a confused stranger, someone who had mistaken her for someone else. It happened all the time, right? People saw faces in crowds and assumed they knew things about them. But as Marina collected her suitcase from the conveyor belt and headed toward the exit, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. The airport, though familiar, seemed different now. Less welcoming, more like a maze of shadows and strange glances. Her eyes scanned the crowd as she walked toward the exit, hoping to spot Adam waiting for her. The terminal was busy with travelers hustling to their gates, others waiting by the benches for their luggage, and people chatting on their phones. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, Marina couldn't stop herself from glancing over her shoulder once or twice, as if expecting to see the man again. She didn't. With a sigh, she pushed through the automatic doors and out into the crisp evening air. The parking lot stretched before her, and she spotted Adam's familiar red car near the curb. A sense of relief washed over her, and she quickened her pace. It was good to see something familiar after everything that had happened. But just as she reached the car, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "You made it." Marina turned, startled, and there stood Adam, leaning against the hood of the car. His smile was warm, his eyes lighting up as he took a step toward her. His presence immediately eased some of the tension in her chest, but the memory of the strange man in the airport was hard to ignore. "Yeah, I did," Marina replied with a tight smile. She didn't want to seem distant, but she couldn't shake the weight of the earlier conversation. She needed to clear her head before she could relax. Adam took her bag from her and opened the passenger door, gesturing for her to get in. "How was the flight?" he asked, as he climbed into the driver's seat. "Long," she said, sliding into the car. "But I'm glad to be home." Her voice was a little quieter than usual, and she could tell Adam noticed. "Something wrong?" he asked as he started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. His eyes glanced at her briefly, and Marina could sense the genuine concern in his voice. But she didn't know how to explain what had happened at the airport, how the strange man's words were still echoing in her mind, how they made her question everything she thought she knew about Adam. "No, I'm just tired," she replied, her voice a little more distant than usual. "I think I just need to get some rest." Adam didn't push the matter, but Marina could tell he was still wondering what was on her mind. The drive to their apartment was filled with silence, the usual chatter between them absent. It felt as if something unspoken hung between them, a gap that was impossible to ignore. When they finally arrived at the apartment, Marina grabbed her suitcase from the trunk and followed Adam inside. She noticed how the familiar surroundings seemed almost unfamiliar now, as though something had subtly shifted since she left. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside. "Make yourself at home," Adam said, gesturing toward the couch. He began unpacking her suitcase while Marina lingered near the door, her mind still racing. "Thanks," she said, but her eyes were elsewhere. The apartment felt colder than usual, and Marina couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She kept thinking back to the man at the airport, how he seemed to know so much about her. How could he have known about Adam, about things that no stranger should be aware of? "Is something on your mind?" Adam asked again, his voice gentle but persistent. He turned to face her, his brow furrowed slightly in concern. Marina hesitated. She wanted to trust him, wanted to tell him about the encounter, but part of her wasn't ready to voice the doubts that had begun to creep in. How could she explain the unease she felt without sounding paranoid? "I don't know," she replied softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I just met someone at the airport, a strange guy who knew a lot about me." Adam's expression faltered for a moment, but he quickly masked it with a reassuring smile. "I'm sure he was just some weirdo. People are strange sometimes." Marina nodded, but something in her gut told her there was more to it than that. She glanced at Adam, searching his face for any hint of recognition. Did he know about the man? Did he know more than he was letting on? Adam seemed to sense the shift in her mood. "Hey, look," he said, his voice softening. "Why don't we just sit down and relax for a bit? We've both been through a lot today. We can talk about this later, okay?" Marina nodded again, but her mind was still far from at ease. As Adam turned away to continue unpacking, Marina couldn't help but wonder if the man's words had been more than just a bizarre encounter. She needed answers. She needed to know what Adam was hiding. Marina tossed and turned in bed, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. The strange encounter with the man at the airport had kept her awake long into the night, his cryptic words haunting her thoughts. He's not who you think he is. What did that even mean? Who was the man talking about? And why did it feel like the world around her was shifting, as though the rules she had always relied on were no longer the same? Beside her, Adam was sound asleep, his breathing steady and calm. In the dim light of the room, he looked so peaceful, so familiar, that it almost felt like nothing had changed. But Marina couldn't ignore the tension in the pit of her stomach. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that the man had been right. Something about Adam wasn't what it seemed. She glanced over at him again, his silhouette barely visible in the darkness. Was he hiding something from her? A chill ran down her spine at the thought, and she pushed herself up from the bed, careful not to disturb him. Her mind was racing. She needed answers, and she couldn't wait any longer. Marina moved quietly through the apartment, her footsteps barely making a sound on the hardwood floors. She found herself standing in front of Adam's desk, her hand hovering over a drawer where she knew he kept some of his personal items. It felt wrong, almost like she was violating his trust, but the nagging feeling in her chest told her she had no choice. If there was even a chance that Adam was hiding something from her, she had to know. With a deep breath, she opened the drawer. Inside there were papers, some receipts, and a few photographs. Nothing out of the ordinary. But at the very bottom of the drawer, buried under a pile of old notebooks, was a small black notebook. It looked old, worn, and well-used, its leather cover cracked from years of use. Marina's heart skipped a beat. What was this? She hesitated for a moment, her fingers lingering on the edges of the notebook. But curiosity won out, and she pulled it free from the drawer. As she opened it, the pages were filled with neat handwriting, but it wasn't Adam's handwriting. The script was unfamiliar, elegant, almost flowery, but precise. Marina flipped through a few pages, skimming the contents. The entries were vague at first, cryptic, almost like a journal. There were mentions of contacts, the plan, and the next step, but nothing that directly referred to her or Adam. Her mind raced as she flipped through the pages. The further she read, the more unsettling it became. There was a section about someone named Marina, but it didn't describe her as the woman Adam loved. Instead, it talked about her as a subject, a person to be observed, someone who had been carefully monitored for a long time. Marina felt her breath catch in her throat. What was this? Why was her name here? And why did it sound like someone had been following her? Suddenly she heard a noise behind her, a creak of the floorboard. Her heart leaped into her throat as she turned around, the notebook still clutched tightly in her hands. Adam stood in the doorway, his eyes wide with confusion and concern. "Marina?" His voice was quiet, barely a whisper in the dark. "What are you doing?" For a moment, neither of them spoke. Marina could feel the weight of the silence hanging between them, thick with tension. Her mind raced, her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt the walls closing in. Was she going to confront him now? Would she demand answers? But before she could speak, Adam took a step forward, his voice trembling slightly. "You shouldn't have found that." Marina's grip tightened on the notebook. "What is this, Adam?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "What is all of this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he seemed to hesitate, his eyes darting to the notebook and then back to her. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his tone soft but resigned. "But I knew you would eventually. It was only a matter of time." Marina's heart raced as she stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Adam sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. He seemed torn, conflicted. "There's so much you don't know," he said, his voice low. "About me, about us, about everything. I never wanted to involve you in this, Marina. I wanted to keep you safe from all of it. But it's too late now. You've already seen too much. Marina felt the room spin around her as her mind struggled to process his words. What do you mean? What's happening? Who is writing this? She held up the notebook, her eyes wide with disbelief. Adam looked at her, his gaze filled with something close to regret. I'm not who you think I am, Marina. I never was. The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She just stared at him, the weight of his confessions sinking in. What was he saying? What was he trying to tell her? I've been part of something bigger than you can understand. Adam continued, his voice almost a whisper now. I've been playing a role, keeping you safe, protecting you. But it's all coming to an end. The truth is coming out, and there's nothing I can do to stop it anymore. Marina took a step back, the notebook still clenched in her hands. What are you talking about? What truth? Adam's face softened, and he took a step toward her. I never wanted to hurt you, Marina. But the truth is, you were never just a coincidence in my life. You were chosen. All of this, it was always meant to happen. The weight of Adam's words hung heavily in the air, thick and suffocating. Marina felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting, her entire understanding of the world, of her life, crumbling before her eyes. Chosen, she whispered, the word foreign and hollow in her mouth. What do you mean I was chosen? Adam closed his eyes, his jaw clenched as if he were fighting against something deep inside himself. He took a long breath before speaking again, his voice trembling with emotion. I didn't want you to know like this, he said softly. But now that you've found the notebook, there's no way to go back. You have to understand, Marina. Everything I've done, every decision, it was to protect you. To keep you from what's coming. Marina shook her head, her mind racing, trying to piece together the fragmented words and the overwhelming confusion. Protect me from what? She asked, her voice rising in disbelief. What could possibly be so dangerous that you had to lie to me? Adam looked down at his feet for a moment, then lifted his gaze to meet hers. His eyes were filled with regret, pain, and something else. Something darker, more dangerous. I can't tell you everything yet, he said, his voice strained. But I can tell you this. Your life, your entire existence, is part of something much bigger than you ever realized. There are forces at work that you don't understand. Things I've been trying to keep you safe from. Marina felt the air grow colder, her mind spinning. She had always trusted Adam. He had been her rock, her anchor. And now, standing in front of her, he was telling her that everything she knew about their life together was a lie. But why? Marina's voice cracked, tears welling up in her eyes. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Why keep me in the dark? I was trying to protect you, Adam repeated, his voice breaking. There's a world out there you don't know about. A world that's dangerous, and it's coming for you. I've been part of it for years, and I didn't want to drag you into it. But it's too late now. You've seen too much. And once they know you know, he trailed off, a grim expression overtaking his features. Marina's mind reeled. The world Adam was talking about. What was it? And why her? Why was she involved in something so dangerous? Who are they, Adam? She demanded, her voice growing desperate. Who are these people? What do they want from me? Adam took a step forward, his face drawn with exhaustion and fear. I can't explain everything right now, he said, his voice firm yet filled with sorrow. But I can tell you that there are people, organizations, who have been watching you, watching us, and they're going to come for you soon. I've kept you safe for as long as I could, but now it's time for you to know the truth. Marina felt her pulse quicken as the room seemed to close in on her. She felt like she was drowning in questions, her chest tight with panic. What truth, Adam? What do you want me to do with this? How do I protect myself from these people? Her voice was barely above a whisper, the fear in her eyes unmistakable. Adam reached out and gently took her hands in his. I've been working with a group of people, trying to keep you out of their reach, he explained, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his eyes. They've known about you for a long time. They've been tracking you, watching your every move. And it's all been leading to this moment. You were never meant to just live a normal life, Marina. You were meant to be part of something much bigger. And now it's time for you to understand what that is. Marina pulled her hands away from his, stepping back as her mind swirled with the new information. I don't understand, she whispered, her throat tight with emotion. Why me? Why was I chosen for something like this? Adam looked at her with a mixture of sadness and guilt. I wish I could tell you everything, Marina. I do. But the truth is, you were chosen because of who you are, your abilities, your connection to something ancient, something that goes beyond time itself. I don't know all the details, but I know this. You have a role to play in all of this, and there's no going back now. The words felt like a punch to her stomach. Abilities? What are you talking about? I'm just Marina. I'm not special. I'm not part of some grand plan. Adam's eyes darkened as he stepped closer, his voice low and serious. You don't understand yet, but you will. You've always had these abilities, Marina. They've been there, hidden, waiting to be unlocked. And now that you've uncovered part of the truth, it's only a matter of time before the rest of it comes to light. Marina felt a chill run through her body as the weight of his words settled in. Abilities? What could he possibly mean? And why had he kept all of this from her? The questions piled up, but there were no answers, only more mysteries. Adam's expression softened, his voice almost pleading. Please, Marina. I didn't want this for you. I never wanted you to get involved in this. But now that you know, you can't pretend like it didn't happen. You have to be ready for what's coming. You have to trust me. Trust you? Marina repeated, her voice shaking with disbelief. How can I trust you after everything? How can I trust anything you've told me? Adam's face twisted with frustration, and for a moment, he looked almost defeated. I don't expect you to trust me right now. I don't expect you to understand it all. But all I can ask is that you listen to me. The truth is going to come for you, Marina. You're not safe, and neither am I. But we still have a chance. You still have a chance to fight this. Marina stared at him, her mind a blur of confusion and fear. I don't know what's real anymore, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Adam's eyes softened with regret, and he stepped closer, his voice filled with emotion. I know it's a lot to take in. But you're not alone in this, Marina. I'll be here. I'll protect you no matter what. As the words left his lips, Marina felt a strange mixture of fear and hope swirl inside her. Could she trust him? Could she really believe that everything he had told her was true? The truth was more complicated than she ever could have imagined, and she was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure whether to jump or turn away. But one thing was clear. Her life had changed forever. Marina stood still in the middle of the dimly lit room, the silence between her and Adam stretching longer than it ever had before. The weight of his words clung to her like a heavy coat, suffocating and impossible to shake off. Her thoughts raced, each one pulling her deeper into the confusion and fear that had gripped her since Adam's revelation. I need time, she finally said, her voice quiet, almost lost in the vastness of the room. She wasn't sure if she was asking for time to process what he had told her, or for time to run away from it all. Either way, she needed space to breathe. Adam's face hardened, and for a brief moment, Marina saw a flicker of anger in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by concern, his hand reaching out to her as if he could somehow take away the burden she now carried. I understand, Marina, he said, his voice steady but strained. I didn't expect you to accept this immediately. It's a lot to absorb, and I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But you have to know that what's coming, it's bigger than both of us. And we don't have much time." The urgency in his voice shook her. She hadn't realized how much time had already passed since that moment in the cafe, when everything in her life had seemed normal, and then suddenly it wasn't. It felt like a dream, one she couldn't wake up from. I don't know what to think anymore," Marina admitted, her hands trembling as she clutched them together. "I feel like everything I thought I knew about myself, about you, is a lie. I don't know who to trust." Adam sighed deeply, as though the weight of her words had struck him harder than he cared to admit. "I know," he whispered. "I wish I could make it easier for you, but I can't. What's coming for you? For us? It's already started. I can feel it." Marina looked up at him, her mind racing. "What do you mean, it's already started?" she asked, her voice rising with a mix of fear and frustration. "How long have you known all of this? How long have you been hiding it from me?" Adam's eyes were filled with pain as he spoke. "I've known for years, Marina, but I didn't want to involve you in it. You were happy, you were safe, and I thought that was enough. But now that you've seen the notebook, now that you know too much, there's no turning back." The anger in Marina's chest flared, a sudden burst of emotion that she couldn't contain. "You kept me in the dark, Adam. For years. You kept me safe from something you knew about, but you never told me anything. You never gave me a choice." Her voice broke on the last word, the tears she had been holding back threatening to spill. Adam flinched at the intensity of her words, but he didn't back away. He stepped closer to her, his hands raised in an almost pleading gesture. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could protect you by keeping you out of it. But I was wrong. I was selfish. I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted you to help me." Marina wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to steady herself. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of betrayal and fear swirling inside her. She didn't know if she could ever forgive him for what he had done, or hadn't done. But she also knew she couldn't just walk away from him now. Too much had changed. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice quieter, more resigned. "What do I do? What do we do?" Adam exhaled slowly, his expression hardening again as if he was bracing himself for what came next. "We fight," he said simply. "We find the answers, Marina. We uncover the truth behind all of this, and we take control of our own fate." She stared at him, the weight of his words pressing down on her. "I'm not sure I can fight," she confessed, the reality of the situation dawning on her. "I don't know what I'm up against. I don't know who the enemy is." "The enemy is anyone who knows the truth," Adam replied, his voice low and intense. "There are people who want to use you. People who would do anything to control what you are capable of. They've been watching you for years, waiting for the moment when you would be ready to step into your true power. But they're not just watching you. They're watching me too." Marina's mind raced. True power? What power? She had no idea what Adam was talking about, and the more he spoke, the more she realized how little she understood about the world she had been living in. "I still don't understand what's going on," she admitted. "What are they looking for? Why me?" Adam paused, his eyes darkening as he seemed to weigh his next words carefully. "You were born with a gift, Marina. A gift that connects you to something ancient, something that's been hidden for centuries. It's in your blood, in your very essence. And they want it. They'll stop at nothing to control it." A chill ran down Marina's spine as the reality of his words sank in. A gift? Something ancient? It all sounded too surreal, like a bad dream. And yet, the more Adam spoke, the more it felt like the pieces of her life were finally starting to come together, no matter how much she wished they wouldn't. "I don't want this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't want any of this." Adam stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "I know," he said softly. "I didn't want this for you either. But it's not about what you want anymore. It's about surviving, Marina. It's about protecting yourself and the people you care about." She closed her eyes, trying to take it all in. Nothing about this was fair. But one thing was clear. Her life was no longer her own. And there was no turning back. "We'll face this together," Adam said, his voice filled with resolve. "You don't have to do this alone." Marina nodded slowly, though the fear still clenched at her chest. She wasn't sure she could trust Adam. Hell, she wasn't sure she could trust anyone. But she had no choice. She had to keep moving forward. For better or worse, her life had changed. And now, she had to find the strength to face whatever came next. Marina awoke in the dead of night, a sense of unease gnawing at her insides. The silence of the apartment felt too heavy, as if it was pressing against her chest. She glanced at the clock on her bedside table. It was 3:17 a.m. She hadn't meant to fall asleep, but the events of the past few days had taken their toll. The tension between her and Adam had grown, and now she couldn't escape the relentless thoughts about the revelations he'd shared with her. The gift, the ancient connection, the people who were after her. Her mind raced as she swung her legs off the bed and stood. The room seemed darker than it had ever been before, the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. The apartment, once a safe haven, now felt foreign. She needed answers. Answers that Adam couldn't give her, not right now. She needed to understand this strange, terrifying world she had been thrust into. With shaky hands, she grabbed her phone from the nightstand and texted Adam. "Where are you? I need to know more. I need to understand." A few moments later, his reply came, simple and urgent. "I'm coming. Stay where you are." Her heart skipped a beat. Was he coming to explain everything, or was something else happening? The sense of urgency in his message told her they didn't have much time, and something deep inside her told her it was no longer just about the secret gift that connected her to an ancient power. There was more at stake now. There had to be. As she waited, Marina's thoughts drifted to her own past. Her childhood, her family. Everything she had known had seemed ordinary, safe, and predictable. But now she was part of something much larger. Something that had been hidden from her for far too long. She had to face it. There was no turning back. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Then, finally, there was a knock on the door. Her breath caught in her throat. She rushed to the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. When she opened it, Adam stood there, his face drawn and serious, as though he had seen something in her that she hadn't even begun to comprehend. "Come with me," he said, his voice firm. "It's time." Marina nodded, her heart pounding. She had no idea what was about to happen, but she knew she couldn't stay in the dark any longer. Adam led her through the building's back stairwell, out into the night. The air was cold, and the city seemed eerily quiet, the hum of the world around them feeling distant and hollow. They walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound their footsteps echoing off the pavement. Marina wanted to ask him questions, so many questions. But she didn't. She wasn't sure if she was ready to hear the answers, or if she even believed she could trust him anymore. Eventually, they reached a secluded part of the city, far from the prying eyes of anyone who might be watching. Adam stopped in front of an old, crumbling building, its windows boarded up and its once pristine facade now weathered by time. "This is it," he said, turning to face her. "This is where you'll find the truth." Marina looked at the building, then back at Adam, confusion written all over her face. "What is this place?" "It's a sanctuary," he explained. "A place where the truth about you, about everything, has been hidden for generations. There's a room inside, a place where you'll see everything, where you'll understand your power and the legacy you're connected to." Marina felt a chill run down her spine. "And what happens once I see it? Once I know the truth? Then you'll decide what to do with it," Adam replied. "But you have to understand, Marina, There's no going back. What you discover inside these walls will change you forever. It will change everything. Her stomach tightened with a mix of fear and anticipation. She had already been through so much, and yet, it felt like the journey was just beginning. She wasn't sure if she was ready to confront whatever waited behind those doors, but she had to. Adam stepped forward and placed a hand on the rusted door handle, pulling it open with a loud creak. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and the weight of forgotten secrets. As they entered, the faint glow of old light fixtures cast long shadows on the walls. They made their way through the building's narrow hallways until they reached a large, dark room. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and upon it, a small, intricately carved box that seemed to pulse with an energy she couldn't explain. Adam stood beside her, his eyes locked on the box. This is it. This is what they've been after. Marina felt the pull of the box, a strange and almost magnetic force drawing her closer. She reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the cool wood. The moment she made contact, a rush of images flooded her mind. Visions of distant places, people she had never met, and events that had taken place long before her time. She saw herself, not as the woman she was now, but as something older, wiser, a guardian of something powerful, something sacred. This is you. Adam's voice broke through the visions. This is who you were meant to be, the power you've been hiding from. It's in your blood, Marina. You were chosen long ago. Marina stumbled back, her breath shallow. I don't understand. What do you mean? Chosen for what? For this, Adam said, pointing to the box. You were born to protect the power within it, but others will come for it. Others who will stop at nothing to control it. You have to make a choice, protect it, or let it fall into the wrong hands. Marina's mind spun. She didn't know if she was ready to accept this new reality, to become someone she didn't recognize. But one thing was clear. She couldn't run from it any longer. The choice she made tonight would determine not only her future, but the fate of everything she had ever known. She took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the box. I choose to protect it, she whispered, the words coming out of her like a vow. The moment she spoke, a surge of power shot through her, a feeling unlike anything she had ever experienced. The room seemed to pulse with energy, and she felt the weight of generations upon her shoulders. But it wasn't fear she felt. It was determination. She was ready, or at least she would be. Adam smiled, relief flooding his features. Good. Now we fight, Marina. Now we take control of our own fate. As the darkness around them seemed to recede, Marina understood that her journey was just beginning. The world she had known was gone, but in its place, a new, more dangerous one awaited. And she was no longer just a bystander. She was part of something much larger, and she was ready to face whatever came next.